feel like the greatest war we ever fight will be the war with ourselves. I didn't even realize what I had done wrong, but I was really, really that freaking out. Like, oh my god, I'm back to square one. The question is, how do you even get to realize the voices in your head? So I was just thinking, and what if like our worst enemy, right, is us ourselves? So where I'm from, we have this thing where we say village people, and village people are basically the witches and warlocks in your hometown, in your village, who are like against your progress. So like whenever someone is doing really well and all of a sudden something tragic happens, they're just like, his village people have found him, or something weird like that. But to be honest, as I'm not as possible as that may be, right, I feel like the greatest war we will fight, the greatest enemies we will fight will be the voices in our own heads. Not necessarily the voices that come from other people, but the thoughts that we hear, thoughts that we perceive, and the thoughts that we choose to agree with. I feel like it's even trickier. When people say things to you, you can be like, that's not true, blah blah blah. But I feel like when it's our own thoughts, it's harder for us to draw the line between what is true and what is not true. And sometimes there's that merge and that blur. So what I noticed is that most of us have had things that have happened to us that we used to define ourselves, which is logical, right? So maybe growing up, everybody said, oh, you're fine, and you just grew up believing you're fine. Or people said, oh my god, you're so artistic, and because it's been repeated to you over and over again, somewhere in your head you are artistic, right? But then what happens if it's on the flip side? What happens when you maybe were clumsy once or twice as a child, or you're clumsy every time? I know those people, not calling names, but you're clumsy every time, and then people just say, oh my god, you're so clumsy, you're such a klutz. And then you're an adult and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm such a klutz. Like, it's now become a part of you. And most times we don't see how those things affect us when we grow up. We just take it as normal. Oh yeah, I spilled water here, I'm such a klutz. Oh, I forgot to send an email, I'm such a klutz. And we just begin to own personalities that are not really us. The truth is that we all have these things, like whatever capacity, whatever area of our lives, there are things that we believe about ourselves that are not necessarily who God has called us, or they're not necessarily people we want to be, right? But somehow it has defined us. And I know saying one being a klutz is like the basic, but there are some that are so hidden that you would really not even realize that you believe something till God now says, check yourself, like you actually believe this thing, and just like, oh my god, really? I probably told the story a billion times, and I'll probably say it again, and you guys will forgive me because yeah, it's the example that keeps popping into my head almost every time I want to speak. So one of the things that I used to be like kind of afraid of was like, value. I didn't think I was valuable. Like, I thought I was valuable, but I didn't believe that's the right word. So even though I was doing things and like, oh, this is good, I didn't actually believe in myself that I was valuable. And what that looked like was that I would sabotage myself. So if an opportunity came and other people like, oh my god, Comfort, you're so good, you can go for this, I didn't go for it because I didn't think I was good enough. So I remember that when I was working, my boss was like, one of my bosses was like, oh, you're really smart, like if you take, like you should really apply to like places. But I was afraid because I was like, I would apply to these places and I wouldn't do good enough, and I was scared of failing. I was legit scared of doing something and realizing I sucked at it. It was a real fear. Like I told someone, I would rather not try something and not fail than try it and fail. That was twisted, I know, but baby girl has grown up. Baby girl has grown up. That's like to think about it, that's like real freedom I've received, though, because I'm all one of the things I've tried and failed, and I'm still standing, yo. It's incredible. But yeah, that's that. So I just wanted to like talk about how do we process our state of being, how do we process who we are, how do we even define ourselves, because a lot of times we should change ourselves because we are believing things about ourselves that are not necessarily true. So one of the things I love, I hope I don't lose anybody. I hope I don't lose you here. Listen to me. So I feel like we're like data tables, right? We learn by referencing and we learn by response. So if your child does something well, you're going to probably smile and give feedback that's positive, and your child realizes this is good, do more. And then if perchance a child does something and you respond negatively, realize mommy doesn't like this, bad, don't do it. If your child is mischievous, the child will be like, do more, depending on the nature of the person you're speaking to. So we learn things by feedback, right? We learn things based on the environment we're in. We learn things based on referencing. And so there's a part of our brains that has created data that is not necessarily true, but it's data that we've experienced and data that we believe, data that holds true for us and ourselves, right? So for some people, they believe that nobody will help you except they have ulterior motives, and that's the thing. Like, they don't believe that someone will just to be genuinely nice to them, and it's something they believed, and it's something that maybe they don't even know it's hindering opportunities that come their way, because they are always so prejudiced against people who want to genuinely help them, and so they miss out on opportunities because they think everybody else has an ulterior motive. And the fact that they believe this thing may be genuine, it may be the fact that they have been taken advantage most of their lives, and because of that they've decided to create a wall to protect them. But then this wall now filters out both the good and the bad, right? So back to our topic, how do you fight the voices in your head? The question is, how do you even get to realize the voices in your head? That's the first thing, because I don't think we pay as much attention to our thoughts as we think we do. And because of all the social media and distractions and how busy everyday life is, I don't think we sit down to literally track, okay, what happened this month? Who was I this month? What did I do this month? How did I respond to things this month? What do I even want to be? Like, in the first place, who do I even want to be? I feel like that's a starting point if you're going to build something. So if I want to build a skyscraper, again, I feel like I say this a lot. I need to get better examples. But if you want to build something, you probably have a template of what you want to be, and at least, even if it's not detailed, you have a brief description of where you're going to, right? Back to the story, I was saying that I have forgotten what I was saying. Was that there was the fear of failure, and there was also the thing about me not feeling like I was good enough. And so I had started my business, which you probably should know about. It's called The Noir. If you don't know about it, clap for yourself. Go to, I'm sure, okay, get this on. Yeah, so it's called The Noir. And I had been sabotaging my progress because I didn't believe I was good enough. Most of the times I would have opportunities come my way, but because I didn't believe I was good enough, I didn't put my 100 to it. I would do it and then, probably like mess up, because at that point in time I didn't think I was good enough and make a mistake. And for some reason, the only way I can explain this is like, Peter, when he was trying to walk on water, and the moment he took his eyes off Jesus, started sinking. I feel like that's what self-doubt does to you. You're doing something, you're doing really well, and the moment you begin to think, is this possible, you start drowning, or you start sinking into whatever sea of unbelief you're working on, right? I had done this for a while. When people come to buy stuff from me, I would give them huge discounts. I want to give them lower prices because I just felt like whatever I'm asking for is not what I deserve. At that point, I thought I was just being generous and wise and smart, market entry. But when I looked back in retrospect, it was all from fear. The fear that I wasn't good enough, the fear that people wouldn't support me, the fear that, what I had to give wasn't valuable. How I started to uncover this was in 2023. I'd been at a meeting and some things had happened, and they were not malicious, right? But then the way I interpreted it through my own lens, because everything that happens to you goes through the lens of your own filters, the way you decide to decode data you get. And so by the time I decoded the data, everything they had said summed up to, we do not value the work you've done. And I was infuriated. I was actually heartbroken. Then again, God had brought my attention to it, and he asked me why I was so upset by what had happened. And so I decided to start thinking, and I went down to the particular statement that hurt me, and he asked me why the statement hurts me, and I just kept unraveling, and at the bottom of it, I just thought, they don't value me. That was the summary of why I felt triggered and upset and felt like, man, this really hurt me so much. That's when God started to teach me about how to process my thoughts and my emotions. And I feel like most of us think emotions are, they're just facts. Like, you're angry, and that's it. But I've learned to interpret emotions as messengers, the same way we have like pain receptors, right? So say, for example, you're walking and you hit your head on a pool or something, right? First of all, you become alert that something unfortunate has happened, because now you're in pain, right? A wise person would probably stop and think, what happened? Why did that happen? First of all, you want to even check if your head is okay. Like, that's the first thing. You want to pay attention to the part of yourself that has been injured or broken or hurt, right? And just confirm if it's okay. Second thing you want to do is you want to evaluate the circumstances that it happened in. So what happened? Maybe you were probably listening to music and you weren't paying attention, and because of that you hit your head on the pole. Maybe the pole shifted and came front while you were working, so the path was probably clear, and then the pole just dashed and came. Like, you really want to analyze what happened, and you probably want to think, what can I do better? Do I want to keep working with music, or are there other structures and processes that I can put in place, right? And I feel like we fail to do this with our mental state. I feel like we neglect our mental states a lot. We probably take more care of our physical bodies than we do our minds. And our minds really are, like, your mind is literally the most important part of your being. Truly, but I don't think we do good enough job in loving ourselves and taking care of ourselves and nurturing ourselves. And so let's take and juxtapose this illustration that if you agree is wise, juxtapose it with our own emotional and mental state and how we want to handle our self-care, mental self-care differently. The first thing that I had realized was that my subconscious mind, which I tried to explain before as the things that have happened in our previous lives that we've believed as a result of the way we've been nurtured or natured, meaning by the experiences we've had before that we have held true to us, that we've now used as a filter to judge every other thing that has come. So the example of that person that says someone can genuinely help you, they will always have ulterior motives based on one or two circumstances that happened to them that held true in that moment. They have now decided to create a law in their own reality that holds true forever, right? One of the things that I had to do was realize that there was something that happened to me in the past that made me create this law that I was not valuable. And that was true because I had looked at different area of my life, and this law had applied. This law had applied in my career. I had not looked for more opportunities. I had not thought I was going to get a better job. I had not fought for a better pay even when I knew that I deserved more pay. It held true probably in my relationships. When people offended me, I was just, I didn't treat myself with value. I didn't say, oh, this really upset me. Not maliciously, but if you care about relationships, you would definitely want to teach them how to treat you and learn how to treat them. And so even my relationships, when things happened, I would dismiss it and let it go without really addressing the root cause. And so one of the things that, God had highlighted was that this was something that I had believed. I had literally believed that I was not valuable. And so even if they weren't saying I wasn't valuable, I had interpreted their message as that. The subconscious mind contains things that we have repeated to ourselves over and over and over and over again. And one of the Bible verses I love is, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. So if you ever want to receive change, you need to transform your mind. And the only way you can transform your mind is by feeding it something else. So there's this analogy I love. So imagine you have like a cup of milk, and you have to change the contents of that cup of milk, but the cup can't be empty, right? What's the one way you would do that? And I feel like this is my favorite illustration for interpreting like how we can transform our minds. And so what you do is that you put the cup of milk under running faucet of water, and the water will displace the contents of the cup after a while, and you would soon have a clear glass of water. And I feel like it's the same way with our minds. The easiest way to change your beliefs, the way you view a certain subject, is to expose yourself to a different school of thought continuously. And what that does is that it helps you to rewire your mind, right? So if you're in a place where you believe that people always take advantage of people when they need something, like people really approach you because they need to get something from you. Imagine you're exposed to a group of people that genuinely get close to you because they love you and not because they want to exploit you, and that happens over and over and over again. There's a tendency that your mindset about that would change. This would most likely happen when there's an awareness, when you come to this realization that this doesn't hold true again. So there's a form of consciousness required to change what you believed before. So what had happened was that by the middle of May 2023, I had realized that I believed three things that were seriously detrimental to my well-being as a human being and to my progress, and it was not my village people doing me. First one was I didn't believe I was genuinely loved, I didn't believe I was wanted, and I didn't believe I was valued, which were the three things that I realized that had slowly poked into my mindset and it's where my relationships and the way I interacted with people. And I didn't know this. I like, if you had asked me about, did you feel loved, I'm just like, duh, of course I'm loved. But there's a part of me that really didn't believe it. There's part of me that didn't receive it completely, and so I'd struggled with that. And so what had happened was that I would repeat to myself over and over again, you're loved, you're valued, you're wanted. And then I would also sit down occasionally just to imagine what it felt like to be around people that loved me and people I loved, and to be valued, like what that would look like, and to be wanted. Like, I would create mental pictures in my head to replace the default response that my mind would usually give me when I encountered scenarios. And so other places where I would make a mistake, I'm like, comfort, are you stupid? Or, you would say something like, most times we're the most unkind people to ourselves. We're usually the harshest with ourselves. And so situations where I would respond out of feeling they don't want you or whatever, I started realizing that after about maybe like a week or two, that my responses started to change. Like, I was just like, oh, who this? Like, there was much kindness from myself, more patient with myself. I valued myself more. And the simple truth about this is that you can't receive what you don't know you're receiving, right? And so most of us, even though there is probably love around us, we can't receive love because we don't know what love is. Or maybe we're surrounded by wealth. We can't create wealth because we don't know what wealth is. We're not able to identify it. We're not able to see it for what it is. And when you don't see something for what it is, it's very hard for you to receive it and to replicate it. And that's what happens with most of us. The problem is not that we don't have those things available to us. It's just that we don't know what they are and how to discern them for what they are. And so, for example, you can have someone who is really, really talented and is amongst people that can, help him like create a good music career, right? And because this person doesn't identify his talent and identify the possibility that he carries within himself, he can be in that environment forever and still die poor and still never become anything substantial, because he never was able to see, to identify, I'm trying to look for a different word, but that career never materialized in his mind. He couldn't see for what it was. And that's what happens to most of us. The issue is that it's not the lack of it, it's just the fact that we're not aware of what it is that we want or what it is that we need. And so because we're not aware of it, we can't take it even though it's right in front of us. So one of the things I did was just that I did that continuously. And then after like a month, things started to happen. Like, my business, like, people started buying things more. I realized that even like my relationships, I started getting like people who I would have like good conversations with, and people who were just there and present and really kind to me and all of that. And I just like, ooh, this is actually change. And like, my reality started to transform based on the things that I had spoken to myself. I told myself I was loved and I was valued and I was wanted, and those things started materializing in my life, which was really great. Now, guess what I did? Okay, so yeah, one of the things that happened during that time was that I would literally wake up every day to something good. Like, I wake up every day and God would do something really beautiful for me. Like, I wake up to a miracle or something. Like, someone would reach out and buy an order, or like something just fantastic happened. And then I was just like, oh my God, this is going to end very soon. Like, what if this ends? And how will I handle it? And I just started focusing on there's going to be an end to this, and I need to prepare myself. And soon enough, guess what? After 1 month of good things, everything just ended. And I was just like, I knew that was going to happen, whatever. And so I started now freaking out, like what did I do? Like, I didn't even realize what I had done wrong, but I was really, really now freaking out. Like, oh my God, I'm back to square one. Like, everything I feel like I had built and the momentum I had created, everything was lost. So that really scared me. But then, remember, I think I was having a conversation with God, and God said, you didn't dig a well deep enough. And I was like, bruh. So I'm going to explain that to you. I'm from the north in Nigeria, and we have two main weathers in Nigeria, if you're not aware. We have the rainy season and we have what we call Harmattan. So rainy season, obviously the rain pours, and in Harmattan, the rain decides not to fall. In the north, during the dry season where I lived in particular, if you didn't have a well, you most likely not have water. So if you wanted to dig a well and have water throughout the year, what you had to do is that you had to dig a borehole, and when you dug the borehole, you had to get to the water table. So there's a place in the earth, a rock, that once you dig beneath that rock, you have access to like a pool of water. That's what we call the water table. And so God said, yeah, you dug your well, you meditated, you believed, but you only reached the part that had water. But when the dry season came, you hadn't reached the water table, and so there was nothing to sustain you in that season. And I realized that I had actually stopped keeping myself in that place of believing that I was valued, I was wanted, and I was loved. And so after a while, the water I had managed to dig up in my well dried out, and because I hadn't reached the source of the state of my being, which is God, right? I hadn't reached that place where God actually fueled that belief fully. I'd lost it, and I'd lost it partly because I was also afraid that what I was receiving was too good and was going to end one day. And I mean, in hindsight, I can look at it clearly and see, oh, this is where I made the mistake, this is what changed. But while I was doing all of this, it was very hard to see what was happening in that time, right? And so, in order for this video not to be too long, I believe that each of us are loved by God. I believe that God wants the best for us. I believe that God has great things in store for us. But I believe that the greatest enemy we'll fight will be the thoughts we have believed in and we've built over time. And most times those things aren't feeding us. They're stealing away from us. They're stealing God's goodness from us. And quite rightly, quite truly, like, your belief in those things were valid because you had experienced things. But most times I believe that God's word should be the standard for everything we believe. You know, one of the people that really tripped me in the Bible is Joseph. So Joseph had this dream, and in the dream his brothers were bowing down to him, and then Joseph ended up as a slave and a prisoner. But then God's word came true eventually. So Joseph could have gotten to a place where, like, you know what, God spoke, but it's not happening, so I'm just going to leave that and be myself, take care of myself, you know, look out for the boy, whatever, and he would have probably missed out what God had for him. So there will be times when you may get into scenarios where what you believe is not what necessarily is happening to you. So you may believe that you're loved, but you're in a situation where you feel very unloved, where people are probably being mean and malicious. But it's up to you to stay and maintain your belief. You need to fight for what you believe. And another sneaky thing the devil does is that he whispers things to you as if you were the one talking to yourself. So for example, you do something, you make a mistake, and you say, oh, I am something. And most times we believe that that's us talking. So I can never amount to something good. This will not work for me. And because the thought comes in first person, you believe that you're the one saying it. So one of the things I've had to realize is that when a thought comes in and I'm just like, oh, is this going to serve me? No. Whoever you are, whatever you're from, I'm not going to believe in you. Like I'll just be like, no, thank you. And I have to correct myself and tell myself the opposite. I'm going to be wealthy. I'm going to be loved. I'm going to be valuable. I'm going to be surrounded by amazing people. And most times I also try to just visualize, like, one day what would it look like to be amongst friends that I genuinely love, and, you know, just be in a place where I feel cared for. So with these few points of mine in in this video, I hope you've been able to, like, pick one or two things to help you where you are right now. And what I would say is that whenever you feel triggered, sit down with yourself and figure out, why did this upset me? What hurt me about this? And it's best for you to deal with God. I feel like God's the only person that can truly shed light on the matter. You can do it by yourself, but I feel like you won't really get to the root of it, right? So please, by all means, sit down with God. And when you get to the truth, go back to God and, like, God, this is what I believe. What does your word say about it? What do you want to say to me about this? And when he gives you that, you need to steward it. Say to yourself as much as you can. Initially, you may not believe it. Initially, you're just saying things that don't hold true for you. But stay there. And when things start to change, don't stop stewarding that word. By stewarding, I mean, don't stop repeating it to yourself. Don't stop trying to see it happen for you. Don't stop when you feel like you see water breakthrough. Stay there till that becomes your constant reality. And I feel like when you're moving in a certain direction, there's always a certain resistance towards you. So in physics, it's called friction. Friction is a force that is opposing the main force that is happening. So when you walk, right, there's friction on the front. The friction is actually what keeps you from slipping. So it's counter you, but it's also necessary for you to stand. Yeah, I feel like, yeah. So whenever you feel friction, whenever you feel a resistance, do not stop it, because that was a mistake I made. Once I felt a resistance, and the resistant thought that I felt was that these good things I was experiencing were going to end. And then because I experienced that resistance, I bought into that lie. I was like, yeah, it will end, right? Because that was another lie I believed, that nothing good lasts forever. So now I know better. Now I'm trying to do better. And I just wanted to share this with you in case this would help you. But listen to yourself. Listen to the thoughts you hear, you perceive. You thought that is not the word of God, that is not according to the word of God, that's not going to build you up. You need to catch that thought there and then and speak the opposite to yourself, or say the opposite in your head. And also, not every thought is yourself, so you need to be aware about that. But the last thing I want to say is be kind to yourself. Like, so now when something happens to me, I'm just like, oh, comfort, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. We could do better. You can do better. Like, I try to be kind to myself. Before, I'll just be like, you, Steph, you can't get anything right. Like, what's this? Everybody's getting it right. What's your problem? Can't you figure it out? I know that, like, that doesn't help you. So I'm just like, baby girl, it's okay. We made a mistake. You're going to apologize now, and we're going to do better. I know it hurts you, but this is who you are, and you're going to be better. And I feel like, get a mental picture of who you want to be. Like, sit down, we go together picture again. And so you have an idea of where you're headed, and the characters you want to develop while you're on that journey, and the person you want to become while you walk with God. So I will stop here for now. And I hope you learned a thing or two. If this video helps you, please like. Whether it helps you or not, subscribe and share with your friends. And as usual, it was a pleasure. I'm happy that you made it this far. If you did, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear a few things that you love to work on, a few mindsets you love to work on. And, this year I'm trying to work on my procrastination. Because I probably have a degree. No, let me not say rubbish. Yeah, I'm trying to work on procrastinating so I can do things quicker and more efficiently. And so that's one of the things I'll be working on. And I also want to work on my generosity. So those are the two things I think I will be meditating on this year, working with God, to find out the root cause of my fear of lack, and just being able to speak God's truth over that, so I'm able to overcome it and come into a place where I'm not afraid of giving. Yeah. So I like to hear what yours are. But yeah, if this is your first time here, as usual, I'd love to know your name and if you learned anything from this video, what it was. But yeah, have a wonderful week as usual. Bye.